Yeah. And so they'll be watching us and hearing us as well. So it's better
that's
not
fine.
to be, yeah.
So how are things in Sydney now? They're better or?
Well, the government is definitely taking some very severe action. So there is a sense of, you know, that we need to isolate ourselves and face some big realities. Except for the schools, just about everything else is closing down, shutting down. And life.
Singapore, I'm very impressed with, you know, nothing shut down. We've not cancelled any single class. Schools are open and things seem to be fairly in control. Same for China.
Vishal and Murali. So we are live now and the recording is live too.
Yep. Murali, you want to start?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Marketing and Analytics Information Webinar. We have a few people joining us. I believe the numbers could be as high as 180 or so this evening in Singapore. And I have with me Professor Vishal Narayan. Hello, Vishal.
Hi, Murali. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Monday afternoon edition of Digital Marketing and Analytics program. So I'm currently at NUS Business School, and I'm grateful for you to give you your time and hear a little bit about this program. And I hope you find the next hour or so interesting. So what I'll do is I'll try and focus on 4 things in the next hour or so. The first thing I want to do is to talk a little bit about myself, just to give you a sense of who I am and what my background is. Because if you do decide to take this program, you'll probably spend close to 18, 20 hours with me. So I think it's probably good to know a little bit about who this person is on the other side of your screen. I'll then dive right into the program. So I'll tell you in a fair amount of detail what it covers and what it does not cover. Because one of the things about digital marketing is differently. I want to show you what we're going to be talking about in this course. And then I'll talk a little bit about what does this program do for you? What will you learn at the end of this program, and how is it that you can use these skills in your day-to-day job, and how can you utilize this program really? And then finally, I will leave it for questions. And so if you have any questions, you can actually type those in your chat box. And so what I'll do is to talk for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then I'll take any questions that you might have. And so between me and Murali and the Emeritus team, I can guarantee you that we'll have answers to all of your questions. Okay? So again, welcome. And just to get started, my name is Vishal Narayan. So a little bit about my background. So I did my MBA from India. This was back in the 90s. I worked in consulting. I was with Accenture for a while. And it was in the 90s that I started working in digital marketing, both in a small startup and also for clients worldwide, which was just setting up an online presence. I then moved to New York. I got my PhD in marketing from NYU Stern. This is New York University. And my dissertation topic actually was on social networks in online settings. So I've been following this area for about 20, 25 years now. My first academic job was at Cornell University. This is one of the 8 Ivy League schools in the US. And there also I taught a little bit about digital marketing. What I've been doing since about 2013 is that I've been based in Singapore. And I teach in various programs at NUS, at the NUS Business School. So I teach programs to MBA students, MSc students, and also executive MBA students. So if you see this picture over here, these are some of my students who might look a little bit old. And that's actually true, because these are executive MBA students. They're about my age, they're in their 40s mostly. And these guys literally travel across the world, and I teach them a course on consulting, and so they work with clients. What you see here is a picture of my students after an exam, and so we were actually having a small party, so we took this picture. And this is a picture not here at NUS. This is a picture in the US, so I also teach in the US. So this is last summer. I was teaching at Cornell University. So this is a little bit about my background in terms of teaching and who I am. So let's now dive in directly into what the content of the course is going to be. So as you can see on the screen, there are 4 main pillars of this program. The first of which is search engines. So the big question we're going to try and answer is, as some of you as consumers do, we spend a lot of our time on search engines, on Google, on Bing, and so on. And so what is it that marketers can do in order to use these search engines? We'll then move on to display advertising, which is advertising on, say, platforms like Facebook, or literally billions of websites, and we'll try and understand how we can better advertise on these kinds of platforms. We'll then talk about content marketing, which is relatively new. And so what it is about is this whole idea that, gone are the days when we would broadcast an ad on TV. Consumers write about our brands, and oftentimes other consumers are affected by what consumers post and not about our own advertising. And as managers, we need to understand how we can manage the content posted, not by us as managers, but as consumers. And then finally, we'll move on to a relatively new area of marketing, which is marketing using smartphones. As I'm sure you've realized in your own personal lives, we spend a lot more time now on our smartphones, and that's an opportunity for marketers. And so we'll try and understand how marketers can use smartphones for better marketing. So what I'll do now is to spend some time on each of these 4 areas. And so the idea is to give you a sense of the kinds of topics that we'll talk about in this course. And notice each time I introduce something, I'll say, we'll talk about. I do not say, I will tell you. And that's a very important aspect of the course, because this will be discussion oriented. A big thing about this course is that this program is that it's live. You will be able to ask questions, and I will also ask you questions as we progress through these 8 webinars that we have. Okay? So diving into the first topic, this is search engine marketing. And so what you see on this slide is if you're looking for a beach vacation, I know this is not the best time to look for a beach vacation, but assume that you are, you'll see the kinds of results that appear on the screen. So on the top and the right, you'll see what are known as paid ads. So these are ads for which firms are actually paying money to Google in order to show their links or their ads. So if you click on these links, as you know, you go to the web pages of the advertisers. At the bottom, you'll see these links which are called organic links, which no one really pays for. Firms or advertisers don't really pay for it. So TripAdvisor appears here. It's only because Google, for some reason, decided that they want to show TripAdvisor. It's not because TripAdvisor paid any money for it. Okay? And so what this means for marketers is 2 things. One is that you can advertise, just as you see these paid links on the top, or you can do things so that your link appears when someone searches for a beach vacation, even though you do not spend any money on it. So this latter is what's called search engine optimization. So suppose, say you're a hotel, your Hilton hotel. If someone is looking for hotels on Google, you don't want your result to show up on page 3 of Google, because no one really goes to page 3. What you do want is that your result should show up right at the top, or as much as the top of the search results as possible. And so what we'll do in this course is to discuss a lot of questions related to how is it that we can optimize our websites so that our results are more likely to appear closer to the top of the search results. And so the first thing we'll discuss is how do search engines themselves decide which of these links should come up on top? So how does Google decide if a Hilton or a Toys R Us should come up on top or something else? We'll discuss what websites or companies that have web presence can do. So it turns out one of the things that they can do is to become more popular themselves. And one way to do it is to create more inbound links. And so the idea is that if more and more people link to the website of NUS, then NUS is more likely to actually show up on top of search results related to management education. We'll then talk about how is it that websites can be found by search engines. Because we live in a world now where if search engines cannot find you, then there's a good chance you will not get any website traffic at all, because a lot of website traffic is driven by search engines. And so in the first 1 or 2 weeks, we'll spend a fair amount of time on this topic of search engine optimization. We'll then move on to paid search advertising. And so here a big question that we will try and understand is, how is it that a company like Google or Bing decides where to show my ad? So if I want to, say, if I'm say Hilton Hotel and I want to advertise, how does Google decide where my ad is going to appear? As it turns out, it's not just the amount of money that you spend. Of course, you can pay a lot of money and that might assure that your ad appears on top. But that's not it. There's another thing called the quality of your product or your web page that might actually determine where you might show up on the website. So we'll talk a little bit about how to manage these two things. So how to bid on search engines in an auction scenario. We'll talk in detail about that. And how is it that we can actually improve the quality score of websites? Because if you can, so notice the thing about this equation is that if you have a really good quality score, you don't need to pay too much money to Google to actually have your ad show up right on top. On the other hand, if you have a bad quality score, you'll need to pay a lot of money for your ads to be actually shown where you want them to be. The next thing we'll discuss is, there's this whole industry which all that it does is that it tries to make sure that their clients' ads appear on top. We're trying to discuss, is this really a profitable strategy? Do people who advertise, spend more money on advertising, actually make more profits doing this? We'll talk about keywords, which are these 2 or 3 words that we actually key in the Google search box that clients or advertisers advertise against. And so we'll try and see what kinds of keywords should you advertise against. So if you're Marriott Hotel, should you advertise against the word hotel, or should you advertise against the word Marriott Hotel? In other words, should you try and attract consumers who are searching for hotels, or specifically consumers who are searching for Marriott? We'll then try and understand competitor effects here. So if I'm Hilton Hotel, should I advertise against the word Marriott? So the idea is if someone is searching for Marriott, do I want to pay money in order to show my ad for that person, or am I better off actually advertising for Hilton? So I know I'm getting into a lot of detail here, but these are the kinds of questions that we will discuss when it comes to search engine advertising. All right, so this slide is quite important because it gives you a sense of the kind of work that you will be doing on a weekly basis. So what you see on the left is actually an excerpt of a case. A case is nothing but a story of a real life problem that a company faced. So this case is about sponsored search ads, so ads on Google. And so this case talks about analysis of advertising so that we can estimate the return on investment. So a big problem in marketing, and those of you who are in marketing would know this already, is how to estimate the return on your marketing investment. So if I invest $1 million on, say, search engine advertising, how do I know what is going to be the return? What you see on the right is a file which actually has details of an actual ad campaign. So one of the things we'll do is that I'll share this data with you, and I'll ask you to analyze it and come back to me next week where we'll actually discuss how to go about analyzing the return on investment of this kind of advertising. And so the way this will typically move is that, say, on the 4th of April, I introduce you to the concept of search engine ads. I'll talk a little bit about the techniques that you use to analyze these things. And then I'll give you some data, and I'll give you an assignment. And I'll ask you to work on the assignment on your own and submit it to me and Murli in about 5-6 days. And then what we'll do in the next webinar, say on the 11th of April, is that we'll actually go in detail about the case, where what we will not do is that I will not come into the webinar and say, okay, guys, here's the solution, and this is the best way of doing it. We'll try and have a discussion. I might ask you, what's your solution? Why do you think your solution is better than other solution? So that actually ensures much greater learning, and you're also a lot more engaged than just watching a video where the instructor tells you what's right and what's wrong. We'll then move on to display ads. These are ads that all of you have seen literally thousands of times. These are these small rectangles that appear on web pages for which firms pay a lot of money. These could be text, they could be audio, they could also be video. And so here we'll talk a little bit about who are the key players. So it turns out Facebook and Amazon are quite big here. We'll talk about some of the new concepts here. For example, native ads, whereas consumers, we might not even know that this is an ad, but we actually process it like an ad. We will try and discuss a question that comes up often, which is, if I have a certain amount of money for online advertising, how much should I spend on display and how much should I spend on search? So this is the marketing allocation problem, if you will. We'll then get into some tactical details. So the one thing that we will not discuss is what specific links do you click on Facebook to create an ad. So I can tell you, each one of you, even though I do not know you, I can tell you you're smart enough to create an ad campaign on your own in about an hour or 2 hours. What we will do is to talk about some of the more strategic issues. So for example, Facebook gives you a lot of different objectives to advertise. So do you want to increase the reach of your ad? Do you want to increase the number of people who see it? Do you want to increase the frequency of advertising? So we'll talk a little bit about the strategic issues. Unlike TV advertising, a lot of the advertising online happens in auctions. So you literally have to bid for a keyword or a place on a website, and you cannot be guaranteed that your ad will show up there. So we'll talk a little bit about this process of advertising. So one thing that is not so easy to understand is how is it that we can win auctions for advertising? And as it turns out, billions of dollars are spent through these auctions in an automated way. And we'll try and understand some of the technology behind it. As I'm sure some of you have heard, a big issue in this industry is the rise of privacy regulations. So in Europe, a couple of years back, there was regulation because of which firms cannot capture a lot of data that people like you and me share online. And because of that, the ability of online advertising to be effective has actually gone down. And so we'll try and understand a little bit about how firms can deal with it. So what are some of the techniques in order for us to be able to handle the privacy issues in advertising, which is a very new issue. It's still evolving, and we'll try and have some discussion on what's the best way to deal with this. And again, much like we do in search advertising, here also in display advertising, we'll have a case. So you see the case on the left. This is a case from Berkeley University, where again, I will give the case to you. I will share some data with you. And then what you see on the right is in some part of a discussion that we will have on the case the week after, where you will come in with your own solutions and I will present some of my own workings, and we'll have a discussion on what's the right way to analyze data like these, or advertising or marketing campaigns like these. So this is an example of what I was mentioning earlier, where I said, I won't actually tell you how to create a Facebook ad campaign, but I'll talk about some of the things that you see on this slide over here. So should your ad try and increase brand awareness, which is what Facebook tries to do, or should you try and increase reach? Or do you really want store visits, which is also what you can do through Facebook? So these are some of the more strategic issues that we will talk about in this program. We'll then move on to the third of 4 topics in this program, which is content marketing. So what we're all aware of is paid media. So we've all seen TV ads, we've all seen online ads. These are ads for which firms pay money. On the other hand, firms also have what is known as owned media. So firms have their own blogs, firms have their own websites. There's a third kind of media which is becoming increasingly important. In marketing would know that word of mouth is a very important concept in marketing. Consumers often rely not on what companies will tell them, but actually what they hear from others. And one of the good things about the internet is that online word of mouth is growing at a very fast pace. So if you want to check into a hotel, even before you book it, you can actually almost literally find thousands of online reviews for a hotel, which will give you a lot more information than any single website can give you. And so we'll try and compare, well, what is the difference between what we hear online and offline? How does online word of mouth increase brand equity? And so the reason why you see this in red is because we'll first discuss what is brand equity and why is it that online word of mouth can actually affect it. We will try and discuss, is online word of mouth a good representation of what consumers actually believe? So if most of your consumers rate a product well online, does that really mean that you have a good product, or do you want to do something else about it? And then we'll discuss a case. This is actually from TripAdvisor, which is one of the most successful content platforms in the world. You see this on the bottom left of your screen. This is from Harvard Business School. And so we'll try and understand that if you're a content platform, how is it that you should manage your business? how should you deal with consumers, who are the people who provide content, and how should you deal with advertisers like hotels, like restaurants, because this is an evolving business model, if you will. And then finally, we will discuss, as managers, can we just sit back and hope that consumers will write good things about us online, or is it that we can incentivize them to actually say good things in a way that's ethical, in a way that's legal? So what is it that managers can actually do to incentivize consumers to actually post more and more online content in the digital space? We'll then talk about a case. This is a case on L'Oreal. And so what you see here are pictures of 3 different kinds of hair dyes that L'Oreal was thinking of launching. So this is a case on social media. And so there are 2 kinds of questions we will discuss here. One is a question, the broader question here is, what kind of data is important to track on social media? A big problem that marketers face is that there's a lot of data online. And it's not clear to us what is it that's useful for us as marketers and what is it that's not useful. And so literally, I'll give you the example of what L'Oreal actually does and what are some of the best practices of this company in terms of tracking social media. If they monitor search engines, what is the kind of data that they can gather in order to decide what kinds of products they should be launching. So this is not a decision of advertising. This is a decision of what kinds of products they should be selling. In the second half, we'll discuss how companies can use social media in order to launch a new product. So traditionally, we would do TV advertising or maybe some search advertising for launching a new product. Nowadays, you can actually use social media in order to launch a product. So we'll try and discuss some of the techniques that L'Oreal used and some other company used in this space just to make use of social media to better launch a product more effectively. We'll then get to a very strategic problem in marketing, and those of you who have a lot of experience in marketing or in business would appreciate this immediately. So the problem is the following, and as part of my job, I meet a lot of senior marketing executives and even CEOs. And so they tell me, Vishal, here's the big problem with marketing. We're willing to spend a lot more money in marketing now, but we don't know where to spend it. So should we spend it offline or should we spend it in advertising online? And if yes, what's the right ratio? Is it 60-40? Is it 30-20? So we'll discuss a case that actually gets at that problem. So BBVA Compass is actually a bank based in the US that faced this problem. So much like the earlier cases, I'll give you data on what this company is actually doing and how they tried to solve this problem. The problem doesn't end if I tell you, okay, spend 30% of your advertising budget on online marketing. It only starts there, because then you have to decide, well, how much should you spend on search engines like Google, or how much should you spend on Facebook or Amazon or literally billions of websites that are there. And so this is on an overall basis, this is called the marketing resource allocation problem. And so we'll do 2 things. So one, before we get to the case, I'll talk about some mathematical models that are used by firms to solve these kinds of problems. And then through the case, we'll actually try and better understand how these kinds of models are used. The last topic that we'll discuss is in week 7 or week 8, relates to smartphones. And so what you see on this chart over here is there's 2 lines. One is a black line, the other is a red line. The black line shows you the amount of time per day people spend on mobile phones in the US. As you can see now in the year 2020, it's almost 4 hours. On the other hand, if you look at the red line, which is the amount of money that the amount of time that people spend on TV, it's actually decreasing over time. As you can imagine, many of us don't even have TVs anymore. And so this has implications on advertising. And so what you see on the right is this chart which shows, if you look at the red bar, it shows you that the amount of ad spending on mobile phones or smartphones is actually increasing very, very quickly. And this is a trend that's true not just for the US, it's even more true for Asia. And we'll talk a little bit about why this is an even bigger trend in Asia. And so we'll try and discuss smartphones at a more strategic level, not just as another device that consumers use. So for example, how do you decide how much advertising to do on smartphones vis-a-vis desktops or laptops? Do consumers do different things on smartphones as opposed to desktops? Does the fact that the size of your laptop screen is much bigger than the size of your smartphone screen, does that have implications for marketers or for advertising? So we'll discuss those kinds of questions. A big problem in smartphone marketing is that we've become very good at creating apps. You know, in this building, we have students who are 20 years old and they actually create their own apps. The problem with apps is that most of them never get downloaded. And even when apps do get downloaded, most of them, people stop using those apps after the first month or so. As you know by experience, most of the apps that we use are free. So in that situation where consumers are not really paying marketers to use apps, what is it that marketers can do with smartphones? And then we'll discuss some of the things that are new in marketing that have never really been part of the marketing lexicon. So for example, crowdedness. One of the things that we can do using smartphones is to decide whether we want to advertise in a very crowded area, like inside a mall or inside a shopping mall, or in a less crowded area like a park. Does the weather matter? So we'll discuss some of the really new things in the context of smartphone marketing. And so before I end this discussion, you might be wondering, well, why these 4 topics? Why is it that I'm focusing on these 4 topics? And so to take a minute to talk a little bit about this program and how it evolved. So I've been teaching digital marketing for only about a year, because I wanted to develop an entirely new program on digital marketing. And I spent a lot of time talking to marketers in Asia, so Singapore, China, India, Malaysia, Australia, and try and understand what are some of the important things that they care about. And these are the 4 areas that they came up with. So these are not the topics that I have decided. These are the topics that have been really came up in my actually talking to a lot of people in Asia. Okay? So while you know now which are the topics that we will talk about, there are also topics that we will not talk about. So for example, if you think of digital marketing as, say, how is it that I want to grow my online retail business? We'll not talk so much about online retailing. We'll only talk about how retailers can advertise. If you want to better understand how to do pricing online, that's not an area of focus. It'll come up in some cases, but it's not a major focus area, which is why I wanted to be clear on what we do cover in this program and what we do not. So the question that I'm sure a lot of you are wondering is, what do you guys have to do in this? First thing is attend the webinars. So there will be 8 webinars starting the 4th of April, where I will talk just as I am talking now for 2.5 hours from 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. Singapore time. And so what you have to do necessarily in order to get a certificate from NUS is to attend at least 6 of these. So in terms of the other things you have to do, we will give you a lot of assignments. In fact, there will be 6 assignments. And as I mentioned earlier, a typical assignment is a case. And so I'll give you an assignment, I'll give you some questions for it, and you will attempt those questions and submit the assignment as a written write-up. So you'll email it or you'll post it online. And so what we will do then is the following week. So suppose we're in the 4th of April and I give you an assignment. I'll give you about 6 days to complete it. So by the 10th of April, you would have completed it. And then in the webinar on the following Saturday, which is the 11th of April, we'll have a discussion on that case, on that specific assignment. This will not be me telling you what the solution is. This will be us discussing what's the right way to approach a problem and what can we learn from everyone else. And so as part of your certification requirements, you actually have to complete at least 3 of these assignments, and we'll grade these for completion. In addition, there will be quizzes. As you might have realized by now, this program is a little more quantitative than some of the other programs you might have encountered. So one quiz will be entirely digital marketing analytics. So I'll actually give you math questions literally on digital marketing analytics that you'll analyze. The other quiz will be more conceptual, where I'll give you questions based on the discussions that we've had in the webinars. And there's a minimum criteria for these quizzes, which is 70%, which is standard NUS guidelines in terms of what we need to do for certifications. Okay, here are some of the questions that I get in programs like these, and some of the others, professors also get. One is, how quantitative is the program? So this is not a program where you need to know a programming language. I will not teach you R or SAS or Stata, but you need to be comfortable with Excel. This is also not a program where you'll come and listen to stories and what other companies have done. You will actually get your hands dirty. You'll play with data. You'll make mistakes. You'll learn from mistakes. And I will teach you some of the things that you might not have done in Excel. So for example, regression analysis. It's a fairly simple tool. It's used very often in digital marketing, and you'll use it in some of your cases. The other thing the other objective I have is to make you very comfortable with the kinds of numbers that you see in digital marketing. So even if in a webinar we're not discussing data analysis, you will necessarily see a lot of numbers. So the idea is that if I throw a lot of data to you about a marketing campaign or about an initiative that a company is doing in the digital space, you should be comfortable with it. You should be able to make sense of it quickly, and then to be able to communicate it with others. How hands-on is the program? So to give you two extremes, so some programs tend to be very, very strategic. Others tend to be extremely hands-on. This is actually more towards the hands-on side, and I'll tell you how. So the idea is to focus on practice, but less on theory. So typically what I'll do is I'll introduce a theory to you in about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll spend 20 minutes discussing how can we apply this theory in digital marketing context. So literally apply it and make different marketing decisions than you would otherwise. As I said earlier, you will actually analyze data from real marketing campaigns. Some of the cases that I talked about are cases of real world companies. So L'Oreal, TripAdvisor, so you'll actually learn what these guys do successfully. You will discuss the strategic importance of many tools that are available. So as I said earlier, you will not design an ad campaign on Facebook, but you will understand what are some of the important things to be careful about when you're actually designing an ad campaign on Facebook. The one thing that we will not do is to go over specific platforms. So for example, if you're interested in creating a Google ad campaign, literally you can go to Google and they offer a lot of services for free where you can see a bunch of videos and create an ad campaign. So that's not the objective of this program. The objective is to go a little bit more strategic and talk a little bit about the strategic issues that you will encounter, which you will not get online. One of my teaching philosophies, especially for this module, is to talk about things that you cannot find online easily. Ideally, I only want to discuss those things that you cannot find on your own. And by that, I mean, I access the academic literature a lot. So just to give you an example, I might talk about a study that's based on 30,000 consumers across the world, rather than talking about the experience of one small startup. Because that study is more generalizable across the world rather than the experience of one small company. So to that extent, we are in an academic setting, and so we will talk a fair amount about academic studies. All right, so the one thing that you're facing now, I'm sure, is that this is not the only digital marketing program that's available online. There's many, many of these, and I haven't spent too much time figuring out how exactly we're different, but here are some thoughts on how we might be different, how this program might be different than other programs that are offered. One, it's a little more quantitative than other online programs. So you will, I keep saying this, you will analyze data, and when I go and talk to marketers, the one thing that comes up often is that they want people who are comfortable with numbers, because in the digital marketing space, data analysis is extremely important. All the sessions will be live, and so that gives you the ability to ask questions, both during the webinars and after. And so the webinars are only 2.5 hours long, and so if you have questions that remain unanswered, then between me and Murli, we'll make sure all your questions get answered. You will learn not just from the instructor, you'll also learn from others. And I can tell you, based on people who've shown interest, there's a lot of, I can almost guarantee there'll be a lot of experience within the people who will take the program. And so oftentimes you'll hear others also pitching in with their thoughts and ideas. And I will also ask you, so don't be surprised if I say, hey, what did you think of this question that we're discussing? So I actually think of this as being more of a collaborative endeavor than, you know, one-shot monologue. The other thing that often happens in modules, in programs like these is you will be learning with a lot of people who have experience with digital marketing. And so there'll be potential, and Emeritus will facilitate it. There'll be potential to actually form a cohort of people who are interested in similar areas. And so you can continue to learn from each other. And of course, if you're in Asia or if you're in the Middle East, then the timing works well for you. So Saturday afternoons, or perhaps it'll be Saturday morning where you are. So by design, this is not meant for people in the Western hemisphere, if you will. This module is designed for people in the Middle East, in Europe, in India, China, Asia Pacific. That's the region. And as I said earlier, this is a recently developed course. It's important for two reasons. One is, of course, you don't want to learn old material. But two, digital marketing is changing so quickly. So you want to be, if you're going to spend 20, 30 hours of your time, it's probably better to make sure you spend it on things that are more recent. And of course, the NUS brand, so we're the best business school in Asia. And from a very specific standpoint, if you go to an employer and talk about the NUS certification in Asia, that carries value. All right, so what can you do differently about taking, what can you do differently after taking this program? So, you know, you can read these slides later, but I want to talk a little bit about, one, you will be able to make more profitable decisions. So for example, a lot of companies struggle with how to make investments profitably in the digital space. So you learn about that. Second thing you learn is data. What kinds of data you can get or you should check, into how to analyze them. And I've heard dozens of people have trouble with this. Third, I hear people come to me and say, you know, this agency came to us, there's a bunch of 20-year-old people who came to us with these fancy ad campaigns and we don't know what to do with it. And so you'll be able to better have conversations with people who at least claim to be more knowledgeable about digital advertising. So those are some of the things that you can hope to get from this module. So in terms of the fees, so this course will start on the 27th of March. The fees is $1,200 US. You can pay in full now, or Emeritus has this wonderful installment scheme for you where you can pay in 2 installments or 3 installments. I know I've gone over time, so what I want to do now is to just leave it for questions. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box.
Vishal, thank you very much for that. That's been an excellent presentation and briefing on the course. I'm sure there will be a lot of interest already. There have been a few questions. If you'd like to go to the Q&A box,
yep,
some open questions that you can start with and then look at some of the answered questions as well.
Okay. So the first question I'm looking at is, will B2B platforms such as LinkedIn be covered? Not specifically LinkedIn, but Facebook and Google. These are both, if you think of these companies, these are both B2B companies. In other words, Google makes money from advertisers, not from people like you and me. So we'll talk about the interaction between platforms such as Google and Facebook and advertisers. So to that extent, we'll cover it. But also more specifically, there's a lot more interest in the B2B space on digital advertising. So the course does have a fair amount of content on digital advertising from a B2B standpoint. Will the course case studies be delivered to context that is relevant to Singapore, Asia? To a small extent. Digital marketing is one industry where a lot of things that are happening that are globally relevant. So from time to time, I might bring in Asian examples, but there's nothing to say that, you know, here's something that's very specific to Singapore or to Asia. It's not true for some of the other courses that I teach, where I teach very local or Singaporean or Asian content. When does this course run again? Murli, do you want to take this one? When does this course run? So it starts the end of March, right?
It's April start. Actually, it's in the presentation slides.
So the cost is $1,200 US. The first webinar will be on the 4th of April, but before that, Emeritus might want some of your time. The first webinar that I will give will be on the 4th of April. So 27th of March is when it starts. 4th of April is the first webinar. And then every Saturday for 8 Saturdays, you will have a 2.5-hour webinar. Let's look at the answered questions. Yes, you do need to take exams. So the exams come in the form of 2 quizzes that you have to take and score at least a 70% on. And you need to take assignments. So there will be weekly assignments for most weeks that you will need to submit. Yep, the recorded session will be available to you. I believe it's going to be posted and emailed to you. So I want to emphasize this point. Suppose you're not available on a Saturday afternoon and you're not able to attend the webinar, you have a business trip or something. We will make the recording of the session available to you so you can watch it. What you, however, cannot do is to ask questions live or to participate in the live discussion. So it'll just be a recording for you after that point in time. You will get a certification in digital marketing from NUS Business School. No, so the certification will be in digital marketing. So hands-on, as I mentioned earlier, we will not look at specific advertising on specific websites, but we will talk in detail about digital advertising in search engine marketing and in display ads. The course is individually graded. All work is at the individual level. Ads placed on, so yeah, ads placed on networks like Facebook is very much part of the curriculum. We do cover Twitter to a certain extent, but Facebook you'll spend a lot of time on. No, this program is not covered by Skills Future. Project work on campus, not so much there. If you go to our website on executive education, you'll see a lot of NUS executive courses. These are offline courses that you can actually take, including some courses on digital marketing. So you're welcome to look those up. We go back to open questions. Average hours needed to commit for this course. It's a very good question. So it depends on how much value you want to derive out of it. So there's a 2.5-hour webinar that you have to attend. And there'll be assignments/quizzes, which will take another 3 hours or so of your time. Now, if your only objective is to get a certification, you can spend less than 3 hours and you'll still be able to do it. On the other hand, there are students who will spend as much as 8 hours, 9 hours because they feel enough value in the content and in spending time on it. But at a minimum budget, at least 4 hours a week if you want to do this well. There is no part 2 of the course planned for now, sorry. Yeah, this is a one-off course. Yep, so what I can tell you about certification programs is in Asia, they're quite well recognized. Here's what it does not mean. What it does not mean is that you take the certificate to a company and ask them to give you a job and they'll give you a job. What it does mean is that if you're appearing for an interview after taking this program and your job, the job for which you're applying for has a digital marketing component in it. A, you'll do well on the interview because of the program that you've taken. And B, they know a lot of employers who are actually, at least in Singapore and Malaysia and in these areas, a lot of the employers are from NUS, they're NUS alums. So there's a good chance that they'll actually recognize, they'll know exactly what you've done. And I say this from experience. A lot of students who've taken this course work in the region. I have students who actually bring these slides to their places of work and actually use it as part of their work. We will be analyzing strategies of different types of campaigns. Not so much refer a friend, coupon code, but more in terms of search engine ads and display ads. Cost we've discussed earlier. Yes, you will get these slides. I believe these slides will be emailed to you. Yep, I'm sure no one is traveling. So there will be a fair amount of material provided to you. So there will be a lot of cases. There will be slides that you will get to keep with you. And so the idea is to prepare you so that you have enough material with you in order to be able to do the quizzes and the assignments that we offer. Yeah, so we will go through many, many cases of digital marketing strategies, not just one, but several. I don't know if you'll be able to do marketing independently on Facebook or Google, but you'll learn a lot about it. I can assure you that. You'll feel a lot more comfortable about doing Facebook and Google advertising on this course. What I'll also do is to pinpoint you to a lot of resources that are available to actually learn some of the more tactical stuff. So things like what kind of code do you want on your website so that it actually shows up on Google search engines. Those are freely available. But in those 2.5 hours, we will actually focus on some of the more strategic issues. You need to know basic functions in Excel. You will need to know addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, sorting of data, and that's enough. So things that you would have learned in school. Yes, we will cover examples of B2B marketing, digital marketing for sure. Cost in cost in US dollars is 1,200. Any contact we can call. So we will leave a contact for you. It actually is part of this slide deck. Is this the first cohort? So the thing with this program is that I've offered it online here at NUS. And this is the first time I'm offering it. Sorry, I've offered it offline at NUS. So I've taught this course to MBA students and MSc students. And this is the first time we're offering it online. There will be a topic of predictive analysis, yes. So Murli, if someone wants to address this question, how do we make the payment for Singaporeans staying locally?
I think programs about we need to answer that question, and I'm sure
Right.
they can jump in here and whether this payment can be made in Singapore dollars. If not, you could write to the Emeritus team, which is info@emeritus.org, which is coming up on the next slide. Perhaps we could close with that slide and tell them a little bit about how to address those questions. Okay, there are two links there. The one link there, of course, is about how to apply. The other one about registering and paying for it and so forth. The logistics of admission, you could contact info@emeritus.org. I think we answered all of the questions.
Will there be any passing mark? Yeah, so as I said, 70% on the quizzes, and you have to submit 3 out of 6 assignments. You can, registration deadline, I think it's the end of this month.
Once again, if you email info@emeritus.org, you'll be able to get
yes, A/B testing is part of the scope, and we'll actually look at some data around A/B testing, yes. So here's one thing I want to say, which is, I think, a summary of some of the questions. It's not the easiest thing. This module or this program is not meant to be the easiest thing that you will do, because I don't think it's a good use of your time then. So the way that we think about it is that it's more like going to the gym than actually watching a movie, where you know that going to the gym is useful, but it's sometimes not the most pleasurable activity for you. So do not think of this program where, you can, sit on your couch on a Saturday afternoon and, watch stuff happening on your smartphone screen. That's not a good way to approach this course. People who gain most from this program are people who are actively involved, both for those 2.5 hours where they participate, ask questions, and contribute to the discussion, and also in the remaining time when they work on cases, they come up with their own solutions, and then they talk about their solutions. So those are the people who actually benefit the most from this course. Yep. Any other questions, guys? The other thing I can tell you based on your student feedback, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of new stuff that you will learn in this course. And if you're someone who is not so much interested in marketing, the one thing that I will tell you that you will learn is that you will learn about how the internet works. So one way to think about the course is that it's about the economics of the internet. So you learn a lot about what makes the internet function as an entity and how is it that you can make use of the internet for your business. Because a lot of my current students are actually not marketing students, they're just business students, but still they find this course very, very valuable.
Any more questions or answers from Vishal?
I think we're done.
We're done. There's a question
Yes.
on ABM campaigns. Is it something?
Yeah, we will talk about campaigns, ABM campaigns.
We will. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for lots of those questions and lots of interest that you've shown. Thank you, Vishal, for giving us a full briefing on the course. And we really are looking forward to getting most of you on board. There's plenty of room online. So we look forward to your company starting on 3rd of April?
4th of April.
4th of April, 4th to the 4th. Just remember that, 4th to the 4th, easy to remember. You got to get in before that, and I look forward to seeing you all on the registration. If you have any more questions, feel free to email us on the info@emeritus.org. Of course, you could go on to register and apply for the course on the programs.emeritus.org, link that is on the last page. So thank you very much indeed. Look forward to your company. And in the meantime, stay safe and keep well. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.